Hi, Ryan.
Hi, Savannah.
What are we talking about today?
Today we are talking about Doki Doki Literature Club. Doki Doki.
And it's spooky season.
I chose this one for kind of my pick for spooky season, and I made you play it. This is a game that I've always wanted to play, so I'm excited to dig into it today.
I'm also excited. It was unexpected what it was for me, so it was a fun time.
I'm glad that was. I did my first question, I guess, going into this game was looking up what Doki Doki meant. Did you have that question and did you look it up, Savannah?
I feel like I didn't question it. Like, it was one of those kind of words where I was just like, it just sounds like a cute word that might be not good to say, that it just sounds like a cute word, like a cute Japanese word. But no, I actually didn't wonder what it means. What does it mean, Ryan?
So Doki Doki is a Japanese onomatopoeia for a heartbeat. And I've come across that word before. I just kind of also took it in stride, like cutesy, and love filled. But yeah, it makes sense now.
Yeah, it does.
And especially because in this game in particular, and already I'm just gonna go out the gate here. Spoilers, you probably don't want to be spoiled for this game. Honestly, if you're here, you probably have played through the game. But you open the game up and it goes Doki Doki every single time, and it's just really striking to me. So that's why I was so inclined to look it up.
Yeah, I just kept thinking it was trying to play off of like a cutesy dating sim kind of vibe, so I just didn't question it.
And I just want to get this out of the way as well. Just like when you open the game, we are also going to open up with a pretty heavy trigger warning for depression, suicide, abuse, and trauma. So please find a different episode and go listen to that one on repeat. Thank you. We appreciate you.
So this is the second visual novel that we've covered so far on the podcast / dating sim. I see on here, Ryan, that you wrote the first being Monster Prom, but wouldn't Painter of the Night be a visual novel as well? Or is that not considered a visual novel?
So Painter of the Night, I would say, is like a graphic novel, or like a graphic novel, like a paper medium. And I think that.
But we read it on a computer. It wasn't paper.
No, you know what I mean. Visual novel is used to describe a video game.
Okay, I just want to say, I feel like I recall us referring to it as a visual novel, but if you say we did it, I will take your word for it.
I don't think we did.
Okay.
I don't think we did. But this is a visual novel. It's an American visual novel. And we can go ahead and jump into the background here. But yeah, we did cover Monster Prom. And I do feel like this is a good intersection between Monster Prom and our episode on the horror film, techno horror film Cam. So I'm excited to bring kind of both of our research on those ones to this episode here.
Yeah, I'm excited too.
All right, so let's go ahead and dive on in. So Doki Doki Literature Club, released in 2017, and it was a freeware visual novel on Linux and Microsoft Windows. So just imagine playing this game, like finding it for free online and just downloading it to your computer and playing it there, because that was the only way to play it. It was later available on Steam, and the story is kind of told non-linearly and has some kind of gimmicks to it where it pretends to mess up your desktop and mess up your files, and there are multiple endings to unlock. However, that's kind of generous. I feel like there's really only one main ending, and then there are kind of multiple dialogues to unlock, more like. Yeah, that's really all the background I have on it. Me and Savannah both played it on Nintendo Switch. However, I was pretty familiar with Doki Doki Literature Club before I jumped right into it. I didn't know anything in particular, but I did know that it was a horror game. And I managed to be shocked by it. Savanah, what's kind of your background on Doki Doki Literature Club?
I had only heard of it in the times that you had mentioned it to me, because I feel like you mentioned it a few times before we for sure committed to doing this episode about it. And then I briefly had mentioned it to our editor slash animator, Carina, and she was well aware of it, and she was very excited that we are going to be covering it on the podcast episode. But prior to that, I did not know anything about it.
Yeah, I think it was pretty popular in the gaming sphere just because it's a short game and it has a lot of just attention grabbing sequences. So it was pretty popular among like the Let's Play community for quite a while and probably still is, as it's just gotten its physical release just a couple months ago when I played it. So, as this is your second visual novel played, do you have any kind of new thoughts on the genre and why they are so appealing? Savanah?
I'm not sure about the appealing aspect. Just because I personally felt like this one was, at least from the get-go, not as appealing to me personally. But I could see how it could be a very easy transition for someone who is already like more into reading, like books, that this would be like a logical next step that they would be really into, more so than Monster Prom. Like this felt more like I was actually reading like a more traditional like graphic novel or comic or something while playing the game.
Yeah, there definitely was a lot of dialogue, and I guess we should probably give a brief little synopsis. So you are entering, or you are going to the school, and you have a childhood friend named Sayuri, and she's trying to get you to join up with some clubs because you don't really do anything because you're a lame boy who like doesn't really do anything. And so Sayuri prompts you to join the literature club, and it's a club just made out of 4 members. Yes,
4 members. Isn't it 5?
Five including yourself.
Yeah.
So it's a club made up of 4 members, 5 including yourself, and you get to romance 3 of these members within the club, and one of them is just kind of the leader girl. And this game does take a bit of a twist when one of the girls commits suicide about midway through the game. And it takes you back on a time loop where the leader and villain of the club, Monica, changes everyone's attributes to be less appealing and make herself be more appealing to the main player. So that's just kind of in general what happens. I feel like visual novels are very appealing to me, just because I feel like they're the most curated reading experience you can get. So like the dialogue sometimes is pinned to music or sound effects, and there are certain vocal highlights that you can get, and you don't have to imagine what the characters look like. You see the characters right in front of you, and everything is just so specialized to a T. Like, I just feel like you can't get a better experience while reading, and you get a feeling of agency. Even though that may not be true, you may not have the most agency at all, like ever in a game, but like it feels that way. It feels like you have a place in the story. And then most visual novels as well have a replayability aspect where you do need to go back and select different dialogue options to unlock different sequences of dialogue and like art. I feel like art is a big reward to go back and talk to different people and select different dialogue options to get special little cute little art of them.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like that to me would be like the thing that would make me most want to play these types of games, or to like go through visual novels, is the idea of almost being able to like collect all the different storylines or collect all the different like almost Easter egg type things within it with each replay that you do.
So do you like visual novels, Savanah, at this point? I mean, you played 2. I feel like that's kind of a good starting point. You know, you don't just have one on your plate. Now this is your second one. And while this one isn't the most traditional, I think playing it on the Nintendo Switch in particular makes it feel a bit more traditional. So I'm just curious, like, where your stance is now, because you seemed a little hesitant.
I think that with this one, I didn't necessarily love the amount of dialogue, at least in the beginning of the game. It kind of felt like a slow burn for me that was a little too slow in the beginning. Like I kept wishing that there was like more action that I could take or more decisions that could be made as compared to Monster Prom, where like you're constantly making decisions in that game. So that to me made it feel a little bit more dragged out. But I don't think that necessarily reflects on the genre. I think that's just more so specific to this game.
Yeah, I remember it did take a little while to get to the first poetry making segment. So the way you progress in romance characters is by making your own poems and selecting words that connect to a particular character. And so you share poems during club the next day. I thought that part was so charming. That was my favorite. It's so fun and unique to me.
That part was pretty fun, and I liked being able to like figure out how you can create certain poems to try to like get certain club members to like them, and I liked that aspect of it.
Who did you try to romance in particular the first time through, or your only time through? I went back and did some of the other dialogue options because you have a really quick fast forward feature on like a second playthrough, so you could just kind of fast forward really quick just to get some other dialogue. But who did you go for the first time?
I went for Yuri.
Yeah, me too. I feel like you're supposed to go for her the first time.
That was what I was wondering. Like, I felt like, am I supposed to be doing this? Or is, like, they're not really an option? Like, am I just being directed in this way? Like, I wondered if I'd try to go for one of the other characters, if it would just end up directing me to, like, Yuri instead.
It did a really good job of making it feel organic that you were selecting Yuri because like your poem is what determined what cutscenes you got. So if you wrote a poem more directed to Sayuri, you would have gotten a cutscene that felt that was unique to her. Which, I mean, I only realized on my second and third kind of play through those segments in school. But I think that Yuri is like naturally the most appealing to most people. She's not as grating as some of the other characters are.
Yeah, and I think just with the type of characters that I gravitate to in general, I like more often the moody, dark characters and not necessarily is it Tsundere, Ryan? Is that how you pronounce it?
Yeah.
I'm not really into that type of character necessarily.
Yeah, so let's go ahead and talk about that. So I went to each of their wikis and I got like their little character profiles and some of their attributes. So we have Monica, who has long coral brown hair, and she is the leader of the club, and she is not a romance option. She is 18, of course. All the characters are 18 as a part of this club, which I thought was a good touch. Just like in Monster Prom, it has that little kind of disclaimer that even though we're in high school, we're all of age, so it's all okay, which we kind of talked about more in our Monster Prom episode. Natsuki, who has short pink hair and is small in stature. There's kind of like a rumor going around that she's abused by her father, and it's hinted at heavily that she is abused by her father, and her small stature is due to malnourishment. And she is a tsundere character, which means she's kind of cranky and brash, but really underneath it all, she just wants to be dominated and is shy and is well aware of her shortcomings. Then there's Yuri, which I'd never heard of this term before. It's called the shrinking violent, or Dandere, who's kind of the, oh, don't look at me, I'm just a normal girl, I'm not special at all. And she's really into reading and surrealism and darkness. And then there's Sayuri, who you meet first, who is your childhood friend. She is described as a Genki girl, which I hadn't heard that term before either. As kind of just like a bubbly, cheery type of girl, kind of like a Toru from Fruits Baskets kind of girl. She's just really airheaded, it seems, kind of on a first glance. Yeah, so those are all the characters. And I just thought that they, just like in Monster Prom, how we kind of discussed that I felt so at home and that all these friends were so familiar to me, I knew exactly who I wanted to go for first. I feel like this game does a good job of setting up familiar archetypes as well.
I would agree. And I would say that it didn't feel like necessarily like stereotyping in any way, which I appreciated. Like, it didn't feel so over the top. Like, I feel like it would have been really easy for Sayori to be like taken up like 3 notches higher of like bubbliness, and even like, as I said, like, I don't really love the tsundere type of character, but with Natsuki, like, it didn't bother me as much as, say, now I don't remember what her name is, but, like, the Medusa kind of character in Monster Prom. Like, I feel like she was, like, too much like that. Whereas Natsuki was, like, a little bit more palatable. So I feel like all of their kind of tropes were easily digestible for me.
Yeah, I think so too. I don't know. Like, clearly they were all designed with a trope in mind, and I think I'm okay with that. I feel that when I read their poetry, and I thought their poetry was good. I don't know. I don't really like poetry as an individual. I don't go out and read it. I don't go out of my way to consume it. But I feel like when I was reading the words that some guy wrote, I was like, wow, I really get these girls, you know?
Yeah, I feel like I don't love that these characters are women that were specifically written to be tropes from the perspective of a man, but I feel like it could have been a lot worse, so it didn't terribly bother me.
So the developers and like the creator, the designer, Dan Salvato, he was only 25 at the time, and he is a big anime person who describes himself to have a love-hate relationship with anime, and he specifically wrote this game to try to pander to both anime lovers and people who dislike anime in particular. And I think I can kind of see that.
I could see that, especially since they make a lot of jokes about, like, manga not being real literature, and they kind of set up the character that you're playing to be as almost seeming kind of like antisocial and being into anime, and like not painting a good picture necessarily for anime.
Yeah, for sure.
Which I did also want to say that I was very caught off guard for some reason when I discovered that the character that we were playing was supposed to be a man. I don't know why. I did not expect it. Like, starting out the game, I truly thought it was going to be, like, a girl trying to be friends with a group of girls. And I was just very shocked when I realized it was supposed to be a man. Or even, like, I thought it was going to be a girl falling in love with the girls. I was just not expecting it to be a man at all.
Yeah, that's also was kind of a shift for me. When I was playing How to Have a Boyfriend somewhat recently, the pigeon dating sim, I was shocked to realize that I was a human girl. I thought it was a human man trying to date male pigeons, and that made more sense in my head to me. I don't know why. We try to pigeonhole ourselves into that kind of. I have no idea. I have no idea.
I like that pun that you did there with pigeonholing yourself.
But yeah, I really enjoyed the tropes. I really felt like I got to know these women. What did you think of the poetry, Savannah? I said that I really liked it. I feel like you kind of laughed at me.
I mean, I felt like it was fine. I didn't really feel like it was, like, necessarily good poetry, I guess. I mean, it made sense that if it was, like, they kept saying, like, this was their first time writing poetry and they were in high school, so it made sense that it wasn't going to be, like, I don't know, some super, I don't know, heady poetry or anything like that. I liked the poetry as it got darker, I think, just because then it was a little bit more entertaining to me.
So we're making our way through high school. We're going to our school meetings, and then we're doing kind of a project because the school festival is coming up, and Sayuri comes over to us because she is feeling really down and sad, and this is kind of a non-optional segment, but Sayuri confesses to us. You know how everyone loves to confess in Japanese-inspired games, and we have the option to either accept her love or to, I don't like this term, but I'm going to use this term, friend zone her. So I'm just curious, Savannah, what did you pick?
I chose to friend zone her. Fully knowing too what was going to happen, because I did accidentally spoil that aspect for myself, which I was very upset with on Google that happened. But at least it wasn't like the biggest spoiler that could have happened. But I fully knew what was going to happen, and I still chose the friend zone. So I don't know what that says about me. What did you pick?
I played this through with my my cis hetero boyfriend. We were like playing side by side, like watching it as kind of a movie situation, you know. And he really wanted to friend zone her because he felt like it was disingenuous to try to accept her love because we were currently pursuing Yuri at the time. But I felt like I loved Sayuri. Like, I felt like I could change easily. You know what I mean? Like, she is just as cute. She's really proven herself. And I think that I could have dropped Sayuri in a heartbeat to be with her. So I chose to accept her love.
I think I just at that point felt too invested in Yuri that I couldn't go back. And I think I felt the same way as your boyfriend, Ryan. I did think it would feel a little disingenuous. Like, it'd feel like I was lying to her just, I guess, for the sake of saving her, which maybe would have been worth it. But it still would have been a lie.
Well, as it turns out, neither options save her. So no matter what we do, she does end up committing suicide. That we find her later in her bedroom as she's hung herself. And then the game kind of boots you from there. And notably, when the game boots you, Sayuri is no longer there in the code. So was that jarring to you? I just have to ask, mechanically speaking, like, all the times that the game boots you out, like, did you always know to come back in?
No. I was genuinely confused at certain points of what was happening. I mean, at a certain point, I started to kind of understand, but I was genuinely confused at first about what was going on.
What was kind of your reaction when you logged back into the game? I don't know if you looked it up, but like when you went back into the game and their little portraits when you open up and it goes Doki Doki and Sayori's no longer there, and I was like, wow. The game really did this. Like, this is legitimately like the opening screen, and it's like you still have to select your save file. You know, I really feel like that kind of was like a moment of like, wow, the game really went hard here.
Yeah, at that point I was confused. I was like, is the game just like, is it continuing or is it starting over? Or is it like then I didn't understand if I was just gonna like fully play through the thing again, but to try, like, I wasn't sure if the object at that point was to try to not have people die or to see who the final like last girl was gonna be, kind of a situation. I was just like, I really just didn't know what to expect at that point, and I was pleasantly surprised by that. Like, I really wasn't expecting that type of turn to happen.
Yeah, no, it was definitely a good surprise, and we can talk about kind of the subject matter later, but I kind of want to go through a bit of the twists and turns, you know. So you play through the game kind of again, and it does make you feel like maybe you are a little bit crazy, like maybe you aren't doing the correct thing by re-entering the game and keeping on going through because you're seeing the same dialogue. But the game is pretty gracious and it lets you fast forward. I really hope you use the fast forward feature. You don't have to go through all the dialogue again that you've already seen. And then you kind of get to a point where things do start to change, and Sayori's absence is not the only change of the game. You start to see like glitches and malfunctions like in the game, and other characters are changing, and it gets slowly but surely more disturbing. And I played the game 2 months ago, so it's not as fresh in my head, but kind of the next big sequence where you have to reboot the game again is when Yuri is the next to go. Monica goes into the code and cranks up Yuri's own kind of like, I don't know, possessiveness, psychoticness, I don't know how to describe it, but she goes in there and she messes with Yuri too much, and so Yuri confesses her love to you. And did you accept her?
I did. I accepted her. Did you?
No, I rejected her because I thought it would be bad for her. I mean, I thought it would be good for her, for me to reject her, and for her to kind of like, maybe that would be the trick question, you know, and like I would actually save her by rejecting her. But either way, she does end up stabbing herself to death, which is kind of a non-skippable, non-changeable cutscene. And there, I was really confused. I also did not know how to proceed through the game at that point.
Yeah, I was very confused. And it wasn't until that point that I actually figured out the skip function, which I'm glad that I eventually did, because I was just like, oh my god, like how long is this going on for? And that at that point I was trying to figure out, like, am I supposed to be doing something else? Like when we did our Celeste episode, like I kind of talked about how since I haven't played a lot of video games, like I'm just not as familiar with like the different mechanics necessarily of how to click buttons maybe in certain patterns or something like that. So I was starting to wonder, I was like, am I supposed to be trying to figure out something else to do, or am I just supposed to keep clicking through this like really long scene that's happening? But then eventually I did the skip and it went through finally.
Yeah, her body does decompose over that time. And it took me a while to understand how to get there. In fact, I went out and I tried to solve some Easter eggs. Like if you go into the computer monitor, there's a couple of Easter eggs in the code that you can fiddle around with. And you have to like go into specific Doki Doki tracks because you can listen to the soundtrack in it. And I was trying to figure out like if I had to alter it that way or delete specific characters, which you do have to do later, of course. You have to try to delete Monica. But I was getting into some real convoluted stuff, which it turns out you can do, and you can uncover different secret messages from the developers, and I didn't have to do any of that. And it was quite frustrating for me at that point because I didn't know how to get past that sequence where Yuri had murdered herself. Can you murder yourself? It just felt appropriate to use murder yourself.
Yeah, it seems right.
But at that point, kind of all the girls are gone, and it just kind of you're left with Monica, and you kind of learn Monica's side of the story, and I think you get kind of Monica's credits at that point. Again, correct me if I'm wrong because it's been a little while since I played this game. But she sings you that song. She's been saying like, "Oh, I've been playing piano for a little bit, and I've been working really hard on this song, and let me show it to you." And that's kind of where we learn what her deal is, and that she is trying to hijack the game because she was coded into it, and she's not a love interest. And she became jealous of the other girls, and so tried to mess them up and take them out to make herself more appealing, which I think is pretty genius. What do you think about Monica?
I really liked what ended up happening with her character because at a certain point, like when Monica starts like asserting herself in the game in just a more of like a casual way, when she first starts becoming an option for you to pick to like spend time with or talk to, I actually like had the realization that, oh, this is typically a character in a game that is not like the option. They're just the person that like gives you the tips on how to play the game or gives you information about what's going on, like the narrator almost. And it was almost like a trope that I hadn't even like considered as being a trope until like everything that happened. So I really liked that. I thought it was really unique in that sense.
Did you kind of pick up that Monica was going to be sinister? Did you have the inkling that she was just a little too perfect? Or, because I really wasn't sure. Like, again, I was kind of entered it kind of spoiler free, so I wasn't sure what was going to happen. I didn't know if Monica was actually just going to be really good in the end, and she was kind of a red herring for all of her perfection, or if she was going to be the one to have, like, a tragedy occur to her. I thought that she might have been the tragic character.
I was starting to believe that she was like trying to save me, I guess. Like there was some kind of dialogue that led me to believe that, and there was some moments where she was saying like the pop-up box would pop up that said like help me or something like that. So I was starting to think that either she was trying to save me from maybe like Yuri trying to kill me, or I was supposed to save her from Yuri or someone else trying to kill her. So at first I had sympathy, and at that point I started trying to pick Monica instead of Yuri, but then that ended up not working out. I ended up having to pick Yuri and then getting to Yuri's death anyways. But that was my initial thought, but then it became very clear that Monica was the evil one Although I feel like I don't know if evil is necessarily the right word to describe her, because she seemed more troubled, I guess, than evil.
Yeah, I mean, I think she is a little bit evil. Just because she didn't try to correct her actions and she was okay with it at the end. However, she's fully aware that she's in a simulation, and that we are the only true connection to the outside world. At least that's kind of my takeaway, and I think kind of the general takeaway that people get from this game is that Monica becomes obsessed with being outside of the game, and like you are her only connection to realness, and so therefore, like, I think she's pretty evil. And I think it's done pretty well. So I kind of want to get into, like, did you think this is a horrific game? Like, were you horrified? Do you feel that this is a genuine work of horror?
I would say it's a genuine work of horror. I don't think I would say I was horrified. I think that if I had played this when I was younger, I probably would have been horrified. Like, I feel like if I would have played this, I could imagine myself really being into this. Like, I enjoyed it now, but I could imagine myself really being into it if I played this, say, in, like, the 8th grade or something like that. And I'm pretty sure it would have fucked me up if I would have played it that young.
I think it would have fucked you up if you played it, like, downloaded it for free on some kind of link on the internet, and then you actually had to go, like, you see your physical files on your computer messed up, and you have to, like, mess with the files in your computer before you can reopen the game, like, because you have to go into your actual file folder and delete Monica.
Yeah, I think that would have been a much different experience. I honestly was, like, kind of confused by that portion, like, on looking at it on the Switch. Like, I don't know, what would you call that, Ryan? Like, I guess, like, the menu before, like, the Doki Doki menu, where you can, like, delete your files and things like that. Like, I didn't understand what that was. Like, I didn't understand if other games had that, or since I haven't played PC games, like, I didn't understand if that was supposed to be referencing a PC game. Like, I don't even know what that would be like to, like, be having to deal with, like, files on your computer for playing a game. So I didn't fully understand what that was at first when I was playing it.
Yeah, I do think that it's a bit of a disservice to play it on a console other than the PC. I think that a lot of the horror is a little bit dampened. I still think it holds up, and I like that you can play it on more accessible platforms for some people. However, I do think it definitely hinders the game a little bit.
Yeah, I could see that. But I do agree that, like, imagining just stumbling upon this game and downloading it, like, I feel like that would be pretty horrifying. I feel like I get scared downloading just a lot of things on the internet in general. So there's already, like, a little bit of fear in there going forward. Yeah,
and that's what I'm saying, because I feel like this game had a reputation for a long time of, like, being a little bit of a cursed game, and I knew someone in college who didn't want to play it because they were afraid that it would mess up their computer. So I think there was a lot of misinformation going around about what it would actually do to you, and it probably wasn't helped by the likes of Tumblr at the time that was still kind of alive at that point, to help kind of propel those rumors and kind of the scariness of this game.
I kind of love that, though. Like, I love things that have some kind of folklore about them that, like, makes it more scary.
Yeah, no, I definitely love it, and I wish... I think this is kind of probably the newest game that's come out that's kind of had the same kind of horrific rumor telling about it, because you think of all the other games that kind of have the same kind of cursed feeling about it. So you have games as new as, like, a PT, which was on the PSVR, the PlayStation 4, and that came out in 2014. And I don't know if you remember this game at all, Savanah. I think you had access to it, I'm not sure, but, like, you put on the headset and you were just in a hallway in a house, going through the house over and over again, and people were saying that that game was cursed just because it was so frightening, and it was made by Hideo Kojima, who's kind of like a renowned video game legend, and people were saying that they were getting locked in the game, that they were unable to get out, and that they felt a genuine, like, haunting presence in the game. And like even back that, you had like the Lavender Town Pokemon phenomenon where people claim to have committed suicide. Like children committed suicide when they heard the Lavender Town music in the first Pokemon game. So I think this is like the most modern thing that I can think that is cursed, you know?
Yeah, it reminds me too a lot of like creepypasta and the like community around creepypasta. And even like there's a creepypasta about Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask. And it reminds me.
That one too.
Yeah, it reminds me of that as well.
Yeah. So I just kind of feel that I don't know what to say. Like as technology progresses, will there be more cursed objects because we can make them feel more real? But then we can just look it up and immediately debunk it, you know? Or will there just be less and less cursed technology as we go along?
Well, I think you know my feelings, right? Or anyone maybe who's listened to our Cam episode where we talked about techno horror and why I find techno horror to be scary personally, and all the various reasons why I think technology can elicit fear in people, whether that be from just having a lack of understanding of how things work, or how technology can almost feel like it has an alive presence at some points in time. So I can only see this progressing, especially as like AI technology and things like that like progress over time, and the understanding of what is real and what is not real becomes less and less unclear. I can just see the fear growing, really.
Yeah, I guess. I just feel like we're in a good spot where a lot of people still don't know how technology works, and a lot of people do. And the people who do aren't afraid of technology. So I can see as the generation continues and generations continue to fade out, that we just become more and more inoculated to the scariness of technology.
Perhaps, but I think, I don't know. I guess maybe like for like the next generations, they won't be as concerned about whether or not their AI seems autonomous or real. Maybe at that point it just won't be a concern anymore. I feel like though probably for the foreseeable future that will still continue to be a concern though.
Yeah, probably.
And I think people will continue to be concerned that they are in fact in a simulation as well.
I think that cursed games, along with like I guess cursed TV and videos and like old VHS tapes and DVDs, are just in particular extra creepy because there is that level of like, what if there is something in the code that we don't know about that's secretly hidden in there? And I think it is a little bit more compelling than anything else.
Yeah, I agree. And I think because it feels more likely to be true almost, or like I think it was in the Cam episode, like part of it is like the relationship that you can have with technology. Like if you spend 12 hours, 8 hours a day on your computer and you suddenly think that something has actually infected your computer or made it cursed in some way, like that in itself is alarming. But then to see how that, to have a feeling of, oh, that could also affect me, like that's also that's scary. I mean, I still have never seen The Ring purely because I was too afraid to watch it as a child because I knew what it was about. And I still have never seen it. And I'm not sure I'm ever going to because it just sounds too scary to me.
I feel like it's probably not that scary anymore. But we can kind of move on to honestly the real horrific part of this game, which is kind of the mental illness aspect of it, about how these girls can have their personalities changed and manipulated through code to increase their aspects of mental illness. So I want to know kind of your initial thoughts on how it was handled.
I felt like I had to go into it. Like going into it, I was just like, okay, this is probably not going to be the most nuanced, and I'm just going to have to be okay with that while playing the game. I really appreciated the amount of content warnings that they had beforehand. Like I liked that it asked you multiple times, and that it was just very clear with what was going to happen. I was kind of curious to click through to like see what the content warnings were with the spoilers, but I didn't because I didn't want to be spoiled. But I felt like that was kind of a saving grace with the way that it handled mental illness, its depiction of it, although it wasn't still, I think, like the best, particularly with Sayori. I felt like the way that they tried to describe her depression that she had her whole life, she said, it didn't seem, to me at least, the most like accurate, I guess, in the way that it was describing it. Like it seemed more so like they were trying to describe it as being just more lovesick.
Gotcha. I think I was overall okay with it. I actually felt like the content warnings in the beginning, although necessary, had a weird kind of quality to them to almost being exploitative, just because I felt like it kind of added on to like the hype of the game being about all these things of like psychological thriller horror, and like a lot of the horror aspects, the bodily horror aspects in the game, were based off of mental illnesses and what that looks like when mental illnesses are cranked up to an 11. I think, which is like I don't even know if I want to say gripe, but it's just like a thought that I'm having. And not that I was particularly bothered myself by the depictions. And I know that some people actually reached out and said that here I have a quote, there are people who messaged me telling me about how they suffer from depression or how they lost a loved one to suicide. And I think it was just reaching out to say, like, I appreciated your depiction. So I really think it's up to the individual about what they thought about it.
I did like how it does kind of present you with a feeling of, like, could I have prevented this, like, as the character that you're playing? Or, like, what should have been my role to try to help this person? But ultimately, you learn, like, there's nothing you could have done anyways, which, unfortunately, is a lot of times the case. Like, you can only do so much for another person in a lot of instances. So I did like that aspect of it.
It does make me a little sad that when you get near the end of the game, there's a quote that I just kept on repeating. It was like, there is no happiness in the literature club. And it makes me sad that it doesn't have an option that you can go into the game and just play it straight as a dating simulator, because I felt that some of the scenes were really kind of steamy and compelling. And I was like, wow, I really want to see this romance play out. But it's not an option, and it feels like it should be, and it feels like I should be able to unlock that. And it's almost like frustrating that you can't. And I think that's very intentional.
Yeah, I could see that. I think would have liked that, and at that point it would have felt more of a pleasant resolution to be able to do that.
But there is no happiness in the literature club, Savanah. There is no happiness there.
I feel it almost kind of fakes you out too when you think you can play through just without Monica there. But then it becomes very clear, because Monica doesn't want Sayori to basically have the same like revelation that she's had about being in the simulation. Which honestly, now that I'm thinking about it, maybe it's just, I wonder if this person who made this game does think we're in a simulation and there just is no happiness that we can actually possess here, because it is a simulation.
Yeah. And one of my favorite games of last year, actually, did I play it at the beginning of this year? I might have played it at the beginning of this year. In the Danganronpa series, it's a series of games where you play as super high school students that are all locked in a killing game and like have to kill each other. But what's nice is once you beat the game, you can replay the game as if it is a dating sim, and like you just get to know characters and unlock all their dialogue and cutscenes and la-di-da, and no one has to die. And it just feels really nice that that's an option. Not that I ever did it, and I doubt that I would do it in Doki Doki Literature Club too, but it just feels like it should be an option. I'm really hung up on it now. I apologize.
It's okay. I think it would have been nice if that was an option.
Mm-hmm. Again, not that many people would take advantage of it either, because I think most people just gravitate towards this game for the shock value and to see what the hype is about. So it's not like that option would even be utilized by most people, including myself.
I'm curious to know how many people played this game not realizing like that it was gonna be a horror game. Like obviously it gives you the content warnings, but if you don't read them, you might just think that it's gonna have like graphic sex or something in it. And I just wonder how many people just thought it was gonna be a dating sim without horror elements in it. And I wonder how those people fared once they realized what was happening.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was released as freeware with a very small amount of description. So I think probably very few people have played it with such a blind eye. So I think that really kind of wraps up my thoughts about this game. I just kind of wanted to know your general enjoyment levels and just what you thought. I made you play it,
I enjoyed it. Like I said in the beginning, it was a slow burn for me. In the beginning, I was really feeling like, okay, I know that like we're doing this for spooky season, so when is the spooky stuff gonna start happening? And I was playing it at first just in short increments, like 30 minutes a day, something like that, 20 minutes a day. And so doing it that way, it felt like it was taking a long time for like things to ramp up, and I was just like, okay, like how many poems do I have to keep writing? But then by the time that Sayori ends up dying, I feel like it really like picks up, and I really enjoyed like the glitching and all of that. It was a pleasant surprise to me that I really liked a lot.
Good. I'm glad you liked it, and I'm glad you liked it when it picked up. I played it in 2 sittings, so I was actually kind of afraid. I stopped right when I thought that something was going to happen, like kind of on like the last day of school, or what I thought was going to be the last day of school, because there's no way they would do more than 3 days of normal school, right? So I stopped after the 3rd day of poetry sharing, and I was just so anxious about it. And then, because I genuinely didn't want anything to happen, like I really didn't want to feel sick to my stomach. Like sometimes when I get that way with girls and just like abuse or trauma or suicide, I kind of get twisty, and it's like a sensitive subject for me. So I didn't want to see it. But once it happened, it was kind of like the Band-Aid was ripped off, and then I kind of got to appreciate the game and what it was doing, and how it really was a good story and kind of a good twist.
I agree. It was a very good twist. I feel like that's one of, even just through like even movies and other content, that's one of the better twists that I've experienced recently.
Good. I'm glad. I'm gonna keep throwing video games at you because they're the pinnacle of entertainment, and you will not fight me on this one.
I will say though, again, that I did feel like it was a lot of reading, which for you is, you read a lot, so that's probably nothing for you, but for me as a person who doesn't read a lot, I was feeling like this is a lot of reading, and I didn't like that in the beginning. That's like what made it feel slow.
Yeah, no, I totally get that. I remember it taking a while. But yeah, I guess that wraps us up. I'm pretty happy that we got through this one. And anything else to say, Savanah?
No, other than if you haven't played this game, I guess now you'd be spoiled, but if you haven't played it and you don't care about being spoiled, I would still recommend playing it just to see like the visual of the like glitches and stuff like that.
Yeah, I have to say the same thing. You can check it up on all platforms now, so it's pretty exciting. But yeah, I think that's us signing off. Our Patreon is currently still frozen because we feel that we want to be proud of the content we want to put out, and we want to get our podcasts up and running again. And feel free to reach out to us if you have any questions. Our contact information is always in the description below.
Yes, and make sure to like and subscribe if you're watching this on YouTube and you are enjoying this. We always super appreciate reviews on Apple Podcasts and subscribing to us there, and on Spotify as well.
Yeah, it helps us out so much, and we appreciate you being here. Thanks so much.
Bye! Prickly Pear Primas is produced and hosted by Savanah Pinnell and Ryan Martinez. We are a family production, and editing is done by Savanah Pinnell and Carina Miranda. Animation is by Carina Miranda, and music is by JJ.